or until we're boring, one or the other. Live on Facebook.
All right. Got it. Okay, we're live.
Yep.
All right. Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of The Duchenne Life.
Can I get a what?
Yeah. Cue the applause track. Here again, I'm pleased to, DJ Kimball. We got Felix Wu and myself, Ryan Russell. Sponsored by Family Friends of Duchenne with our special guest today.
Wait, are we
Stephen
live or
Marchesani.
just recording?
We're not live yet.
Okay, because I didn't see the
Well,
word.
somebody said we were live.
It's a good run through. That's a good practice.
You were all over that, man.
Man, you tell me live, I'm like, I'm going for it.
Okay, here we go. And
See if I'm serious next time.
I thought I was being crazy.
Try it with an Australian accent next time, Ryan.
What about this? And of Discord, DJ Kimball.
Okay, now we go. Now we are.
Actually, we get a lawsuit if I did that. All right, we are live, mates. Everybody, welcome here. We're glad to have everybody, no matter what part of the world you're from. This is another exciting episode of the Duchenne Life. Here with DJ Kimball, Felix Wu, and myself, Ryan Russell. Sponsored with our awesome sponsor, Lindy Phyllis. And we have a special guest today to help us with our topic, Stephen Marchesani. Today, we're going to talk about fathering children with Duchenne. And we'll have stuff for everybody, but, that's our definite theme. But just a little introduction. Stephen wrote The Weight of the Rallying Cry, which is on his own blog site and on Family Friends and Duchenne. Stephen, could you share your blog site with us?
Yeah, it's called Baby Vladimir and My Thoughts. I'll put it in the chat when I have a moment, because no one's going to remember that at all. I started it when my wife got pregnant with our oldest, and we had this whole fetus names thing, and his name when he was in utero was Vladimir. So when I became a father, I was like, let me track what this experience is. They say there's no book for being a father. I was like, well, maybe it's time somebody wrote one. So I started blogging about it, and it morphed from there when Lance was born, and then it morphed again when we got his diagnosis. So now it has a tendency to lean more towards a little bit of life lessons and Duchenne centric, which I'm sure we can all understand when that enters your life. It takes over more than any of us would probably like, but it is what it is. So It's just sort of, it used to be funny. It occasionally still is. The story about my wife giving birth to our older Vincent is hysterical to me, not to her. But yeah, and I'll list the site, but I've been writing in it off and on for about 13 and a half years. It's gotten less so over the last couple of years. But yeah, that's my jam.
All right, well, thank you. Sir, anything more you want to tell us about yourself, or like where you're from?
Yeah, so I was born in Hoboken, New Jersey, in the same hospital as Frank Sinatra. It has since been torn down because New Yorkers discovered Hoboken is really good riverfront property. Lived in Maryland pretty much my whole life outside of that, except for when I went to college down in Virginia Beach. I got my degree in English and secondary education. I taught for about 2 years, and it didn't really jibe with what I wanted to do. I like literature and writing, and they wanted me to focus on vocabulary and sentence structure, so I quit. That needs to shut your sorry. Anyway, so from that I floated around. I had restaurant work, I traveled cross country, I did all the crazy things you do. And when you think you're young and invulnerable, I ended up back in Maryland working in restaurants, which is not what I went to college for, and not anywhere near as fun as it sounds. And then I met my wife online in 1999. That rhymes, and that was not my intent. I was looking for single women in Maryland. I said hello to 5 of them, and she's the only one that said hello back. And then we found out that she lived next door to me. And it took me 6 months for her to figure out that I wasn't actually a stalker, which was its own fun. But yeah, so for the first 6 months while we were dating, we weren't exclusive. So on some nights I'd be like, no, I can't go out. I have something else to do. And she would sit on her porch and watch me come home with somebody else. And then the next night I'd be like, you want to hang out? She's like, no, I have plans tonight. And I'd sit on my porch and watch her come home. And we're like going, this is a little bit intense. We should probably, one of us should move, or we should do something a little escalate this. So we ended up together. She had a 2.5-year-old son. His name is Julian. We actually, in retrospect, think that he may have had Duchenne. My wife is a carrier. He drowned when he was 3.5 at daycare. And I'm sure most of you know the vast majority of diagnoses don't happen until around 5 to 7, generally, unless they have a family history to assess it with. And he was in a baby pool. He was at daycare, and it was ruled an accident, and that was kind of that. We got married a couple years later after we sort of got through it. My wife decided that she owed it to him to live the best life she could, so she went back to school and got her degree in biology. She's really wicked smart. She doesn't have very good taste in men. What's that?
Thank goodness, right?
I know. I don't know if she's nearsighted or farsighted or what, but it worked out because I'm 6'5", 270, and we met. She's 5'1", 93 pounds. So I was literally 3 times her size. Like literally, it was. I knocked on our door. I was like, "Hi, little boy, is your mommy home?" Because she's like really short hair, and she's like, "Why don't you go eat another sandwich?" I'm like, "And you're my wife now." So it all took off from there. But anyway, so we lost Julian, and then we waited about 8 years, and we talked extensively about whether or not we wanted to try to have kids again, because we'd seen the worst that could happen, and we're like, but we ultimately were like, it's absolutely worth the risk. So we got pregnant again, she had another son, Vincent. He's our oldest. He's 13 now. Looked almost exactly like her first son for the first couple of years. Blonde, blue-eyed, pale skin, freaking adorable. Still is. And that made it hard in its own way. And then we decided that, and I apologize to anybody I may offend with this, we decided that most only children have their own issues, social dynamic, however you want to phrase it. So we said he needs a brother. If nothing else, he can learn how to torture someone, because that's always handy. So we had Lance, and he had some delayed markers like you do, but so did Julian. So we didn't really have a frame of reference. My wife's family history, the previous 3 generations were all girls. And my mother-in-law was born in Austria. So pre-World War II, we had no records, no medical records at all to know what was what the family history was. So when we had Lance and he had some delayed markers, like every time they would want to do see a specialist or do some special analysis, he would hit his marker, like, oh, never mind, it's okay, he's just a little delayed. So then a couple of years go by, oh, he should be doing this by now. And then like literally before we could even have the appointment, oh, he's doing that now. So it didn't really track, but then literally he was having his wellness visit for elementary school to validate his vaccinations and this and that. And like everything's great. And we're walking out, and my wife has large calves and my father-in-law has large calves, like noticeably so. So as we're leaving, I was like, look, he's got his mom's calves. And the doctor's like, wait, can he come back here for a second? I'm like, sure. And then she had him do the Gower test, and she's like, I think you guys need to talk to somebody. And we're like, about what? She's like, I don't want to say until I have a diagnosis, but get his CK levels checked. And then she sent us to an orthopedist, which I still don't understand. Maybe she was naive enough to want it to be a leg thing and hope that that would just sort of answer the question without having us go through the genetic testing. I'd like to believe that it is either that or she's just a really bad doctor. Also possible. There are many of them. And then we went to the orthopedist. I wasn't able to make the appointment. I had a work meeting. So my wife calls me up and she's hysterical crying. And I'm like, what happened? She's like, I went to the doctor and without having a genetics test, she had him do the Gower test, looked at his calves, went and put his symptoms online on Google in front of my wife and said, I think he has Duchenne. Now, at the time, I grew up, my family loved, we were big fans of Jerry Lewis, no accounting for comedy taste, I apologize. But I honestly think the guy was hilarious. Anyway, but I grew up watching the telethon every Labor Day, which ironically is coming up. And so I was very familiar with muscular dystrophy as a thing, but I didn't know how it worked or the different types or whatever. So I didn't know the differentiation of Duchenne versus limb girdle versus the various other types that I've been exposed to since Lance was diagnosed. So I heard muscular dystrophy and I immediately went to the little kids in the wheelchair that you saw at the Jerry Lewis things. I'm like, I was like, I think that's a genetic disease. So ultimately, his CK levels were, I think, like 16,000 or something absurd. And next thing I know, we're at Children's Hospital in DC and we got a diagnosis. And it was, I don't even know how long it takes to truly even appreciate what you're hearing. Like, I don't even know if I do now. Like, there are days that go by, like, I'll watch my son go by in his wheelchair and have a conversation with him, and it doesn't register that he's in a wheelchair. Like, he's just Lance. You know, I've watched him evolve throughout his life, however he does. And so I don't really, I mean, obviously I see a difference, but I don't. And what was really weird was, like I said, I'm 6'5", 250 pounds. I'm an enormous human being. So I have one son, my oldest, he's 13, he's 5 foot and 80 pounds. And I have Lance where, no, he was not going to be any tree topper anyway. And he's 120, thank you, steroids. And so I'm used to being around, you know, big, strong people, sports related people, you know, and so it was really different for me to see, you know, I'd have a son that just wasn't really in the cards. It didn't exactly bother me. It was just, I have to look at how to raise a child in a very different way. You know, I grew up, my dad played basketball for Rutgers. My mother, within the framework of who she was athletic. She played basketball too. She's 5'9". So I grew up completely and totally inundated with sports and sports dictating your life lessons. You know, everything that I learned was some sort of sports analogy. Or if I'm, you know, watching a video of something, it was some athlete was talking about, you know, his rise to start or whatever. Everything was within the framework of sports. And that didn't apply here. You know, I couldn't get my head around not being able to play catch with my son once he got to a certain point that we couldn't anticipate exactly when it would be, that certain things would become dangerous. You know, we have footage of us going to the beach when he's 3. And he's just walking around a little bit slow, but he's just walking around for like miles and hours. And we're thinking, Jesus, what were we doing to him? You know, we don't know if that had affected him now or it didn't. We had no idea. You know, and we're like, why are you so slow? You know, all these horrible things that keep you up at night as you get older. You're like, you know, we were horrible to our child. And everybody's like, well, you couldn't have known. It's like, I know, but we don't live in reality. We live in our heads, and our heads capture moments randomly and we have almost no control over it. You know, so now when I'm seeing him in his chair, and, you know, I'm sure everybody ends up in their wheelchair earlier than they hoped or expected. You're like, you know, is he there a year or two earlier because of some of the choices we made when he was little? I don't know. It's been hard, but it really, you get used to it. It's amazing what you can get used to. I would assume you guys know that a hell of a lot better than I do. I'm just sort of seeing it. I can't even fathom, truly, I can't fathom what it would be like to have one day, your fork's too heavy. Feel free to share what that's like, because the more I know about that now, the better I can be there for him when the time comes.
Well, I might say something. First of all, I know for me, it's easy to forget I'm in a wheelchair sometimes. You see your son go by and just forget he's in a wheelchair, and that's always nice. I think my family is like that with me, and I also was raised in an athletic family. My dad, brothers all played football and baseball, and so yeah, it is kind of strange because like I get a lot of those analogies. And actually, when I was 13, I could throw a perfect spiral.
That's awesome.
I could have been the high school quarterback, gotten all the
Nice.
girls. Then I became a doctor. But yeah, that is one strange thing as you lose things. And it's usually not so much gradual, it's just one day, it's like all of a sudden you just kind of can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Picking up your fork or
Yeah, it seems to be almost like a light switch moment, like Lance, we have lots of little cups with straws on him just because, his core strength is still kind of there. It's kind of leading the charge for when he does things like there's a lot of leaning to get his arm up higher and things like that. Things I'm sure you guys are familiar with. And one day I gave him a cup that I'd been given to him for 5 years, it's a little sippy cup and everything. And
Yeah.
that day it just was too much, and don't know why. It just was.
Right.
yeah, and sometimes it's like you get so like, wait, I know I can do this.
Mhm.
I used to be able to. I quit being able to feed myself after I spent a week and a half in the hospital with pneumonia. I got home, I got to do wheelchair. It was way taller than my old one. Yeah, it was just gone. But DJ Kimball, who I think must be having some technical issues, made a great comment. He said, I would say the memories of playing normally are much more important than possibly making a little difference in his abilities.
Thank you for saying that the value of him having those memories is more important than whether or not it had any effect. Because like I said, I'm flying blind. I mean, not like you guys have had this before and know what you're going through either, we're all flying blind.
Mhm.
So Lance is doing, I mean, it's funny, you wouldn't know he has Duchenne either, other than the wheelchair and some of the limitations, because of the physical limitations, because he doesn't have any other ones. He's the funniest kid I've ever met. And I hope to meet you guys in person so you guys can experience it, because you get a kick out of him. His health is good, everything other than the slow general decline of his physical abilities. The rest of him is still 100% Lance. And that's a pretty awesome thing to be. I mean, it's easy to say now, if I had the choice between a healthy child or Lance, I'd take Lance anyway. But I believe that, I truly do. I've never met a more dynamic personality in my life. He knows more or less. I mean, he's 10. He knows more or less what his limitations are. And like the other day, we're moving, and we'll get to that in a few. We're moving, and I have a very close friend who's helping us move. His name's Jeremy, and he's a pretty solid guy himself. And we're moving some of Lance's stuff. And Jeremy, he's very tight with Lance, and it's all very cool. And he goes, "Hey, Lance, man, you're gonna help pick up your stuff?" And Lance goes, "Yo, dude, DMD," and then goes right back to his computer. And it was the funniest damn thing. I'm like, he could care less. I mean, at some point, I'm sure that will change. But at this point, he's like, "You're picking up my crap, dude, because I don't have to." DMD. It's just very funny to me.
Well, that is good to develop a sense of humor, because we tend to develop senses of humor quickly. I think it's a great coping strategy. Like if I hear about somebody moving, it's, "Oh, hey man, I'll be right there to help." Oh, wait, Never mind, I can't help. Sorry.
Let me pick that up for you. Never mind. He does that to me all the time. He's like, Dad, I dropped this. Would you get it for me? Never mind.
Yeah, you're like, I'll be like, never mind. They get you out of a lot of stuff, and yet you still offered. It's nice.
Oh, yeah, it's like, Dad, can I help you do the dishes? And I'm like, sure. How do you want to help? He's like, I'm pretty much just going to sit here and watch you do the dishes. But I'm here if you need me. I'm like, for moral support, what are you offering here?
Like, oh, you
Coaching.
missed a spot.
It's like that dish is still dirty. You should probably put that back in there.
Do more of a circular motion.
And do any of you guys have any OCD tendencies? I'm curious.
I think when you have a disability, you have to have people help you. You just kind of have it, whether you have OCD or not. You just kind of, because you got to explain stuff. You can't do it. So even if
I
you don't have
certainly
OCD,
do have those tendencies, especially regarding scheduling. Like it's hard to have not a set schedule because you need to plan ahead. So early on, I kind of hate when people are like spontaneous with things.
Yeah, he has that too. It's very funny. Like he'll like, Dad, I'll help you do the nuggets or I'll help you do the fish sticks. And I look in there and they're all perfectly lined up. There's exactly 8 because apparently odd numbers suck. I don't know why. And they're lined up perfectly. And like I'll ask him for the fries and he'll sit there. I'm like, dude, can we just cook the fries? Because they're like lining them up like little army men. I'm like, at some point we're going to need to cook and eat them. They're just going to be something that you're going to relieve yourself with later. So can we just get past the lining up for just the food at least? It's just too funny.
And sometimes that's the entertainment, actually.
The
The little things.
Yeah.
when I was young and could still get on the ground and stuff, I would take all of our old Disney movies into clamshell cases. I'd either alphabetize them or look at the serial number on the bottom, put them in order by that. And invariably, one of my nieces or nephews would come over, like an hour later, just completely undo everything I did. So that's how I got a little bit out of the OCD thing. Have something wreck it immediately.
Yeah, and he like I said, he's very aware of it. Like he does not like surprises at all. If he has his mind set up for something for dinner, and he's like tonight he wanted hot dogs. I thought we were out of them. I look over at him. I'm like, I'm sorry, not having hot dogs stole your soul. I'll see if I can find something else. And then luckily I found them. And then he was like, this is the greatest day of my life. It's just the swings that go along with it are very amusing to me, not so much him.
Oh, luckily, good thing I don't have that. I never did homework in school, so I took trouble.
Well, luckily the school's changed enough right now. They almost have no homework. So that's a plus. He gets really good grades though. Yeah. Homework is like almost not a thing anymore.
That's nice.
Well, that's
I've heard it's nice. I have no frame of reference for that. I had plenty.
He gave us homework about our homework.
Yeah, like the teacher, like the class time was it to establish what you were going to do while you were at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. You've talked a little bit about caregiving with your family. Do you have any outside caregiving, or is it just all like in your family? You probably don't need it too much yet, do you?
We up until March, he was still walking more or less okay. He had a pretty big sway in his back to sort of thrust his hips forward to get the steps going, but it was more or less functional. He would use a walker at school to give him a little bit of support and everything was okay. But one day in the house, he was walking and his sock had come like maybe a half inch and rolled over his toe a little bit. And he couldn't quite get his foot up high enough to step properly. So his toe caught on the carpet, his leg rolled, and his knee twisted. And that was the last time he walked. So at that point, that's what expedited the moving and everything else. Because currently we have a 2-story house. We have the chairlift, but because of the way our stairway goes up and then it turns, it's not like around. So we have 2 stair lifts. One goes up and then there's a plateau and then there's another one. And we have to transition him from one to the other. Well, when he could use his legs a little to support the weight, my wife could handle it. It's about 2.5 feet between the two. But since he can't really support his weight anymore very well, she could no longer transfer him. So now I'm the only one who can get him upstairs to his bedroom. So, and like I said, I'm a very big person, so it wasn't that I couldn't do it, but now I'm kind of the only one who can, right? And transitions from his wheelchair onto the toilet were also challenging for my wife because she's very small. It's not her fault. There's nobody to blame here. It's just situational. But those were very challenging. And I'm quite sure you guys can probably relate to this. You know, when you're dealing with somebody who's kind of in control of how you're being positioned or how you're being moved, there's a certain level of trust and confidence you have to have for it to go well. The last thing you want to do is be dropped, right?
Right.
So he sees me at my size and he's like, he's got this. It's not a problem. My wife, on the other hand, is smaller and he's like, can dad do it? You know, which she feels bad because she can't help as much. And so for the last, I guess it's March, I don't think I've left the house for more than maybe 3 or 4 hours at a time, unless he was already in bed asleep, because nights are still fine. He sleeps well. He can move around his bed, so we don't have any issues there. But if he's awake, I have to be nearby. Because the 2-story thing and the bathroom thing. So we're buying a new house so we can retrofit it to accommodate his needs so that she can be more supportive. We can get more help, because right now it's just really challenging because I still work full time. I work from home, but I still work full time. We had him all summer without the ability to walk. So I was doing all of that. And we're buying a house. We're selling this house. We had new floors put in, new doorways widened, closets moved out to create spacing, a chairlift put in for the access to the basement. You know, all of these things were happening at the same time while, you know, trying to support Lance and be there for him and give him some sort of summer to enjoy and to do my job. You know, like all of this was at once. And we're like, oh, I was like, I love that he trusts and respects me enough to do this, but I struggle with having to do it 24/7 without necessarily being able to step away. You know, as much as I'd like to not find a flaw in myself for not being able to do it, that's how I'm going to see it. I'm failing him if I can't do it, because it's what he needs. And that's more important than what I need, because he doesn't have a choice. So the only way for us to be able to sustain this was to move. We're moving less than a mile away into a house half the size. And the amount of and number of renovations we're doing is truly staggering, and the expense is extraordinary. It truly is. It had all shag carpets from like 1980, and that was an affront against humanity to begin with. But luckily underneath they had hardwood floors, which is not ideal, but it's a heck of a lot better than shag carpet. And if his wheelchair scratches my floors, I really don't care. It's not anything I'm really worried about, but it costs $5,000 to refit the floors to have them be functional, right? You know, then we had all of our doors were 28 inches. You know, it's 28, 29 inches is the standard. Well, it's standard for everybody unless you have a wheelchair. So we had to have 5 doors widened to 36 inches to go down a hall and be able to turn effectively into a room. You know, these are the things, like I got the doors widened, or I was going to say, well, we'll just get him to 32 because his wheelchair is about 27, 28 width. So he'll fit. And I'm like, yeah, but he has to turn. And although it's his quote unquote 0 turn radius, it's not. You have to have the room to sort of circle around a little bit to get in there. So 32 inches isn't wide enough. So now you got to take it to 34. You know, so every door to be resized was about $1,000 per door. And I do woodworking, and I've been building things for Lance, but I do like hoity-toity fine woodworking. I don't do that carpentry, actually useful stuff. I make things pretty. I'm not functional. Like a 2x4, I'm like, yeah, I got no use for that. That could you give me some mahogany, because that'd be so much nicer. They're like, go away. We build things here. You make things. So that's $1,000 per door, and that's just to get the opening done, you know. And then you have to buy the doors, you know, and those doors are not standard size. So now you're talking about custom doors. So that's $300 and $400 a piece for 5 doors. So now just to be able to have our son in his wheelchair to be able to access every room in the house costs like $12,000. Insurance doesn't cover that, you know, and there's wonderful help out there. There's charities out there and there's organizations that will help you, but we're not skilled. We're not taught how to ask for help effectively. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, when
Nope.
I was growing up, my parents were told, "Oh, sorry, you make too much money." My dad worked, and yet there was some guy that is above him that made 3 times as much money as my dad made. They got all kinds of help and stuff. Yeah, it really is hard to find that help out there.
Yeah, and there's no instruction booklet. I mean, I know that there's programs out there. Like I actually watched one of Lindy, sorry, her I think it was a YouTube video about, you know, her with her sister in regards to legal support or things that you can do, like different types of foundations you can set up and everything. And you know, I was saddened by how few people actually know about this. Like when it's a disability like Duchenne, where it's more or less, I mean, it's from birth, even though it's not diagnosed from till 5, 6, 7, generally. They qualify for lots of things, but you don't know that. And there's no way to figure out how to know that. And that's what was frustrating me. Like we're 6 years in now in this, you know, in this fight or this life or whatever you want to call it. And we're still finding out that there's actually programs for which we're capable of getting something for. And there's no way for us to know without researching it ourselves. And we're just trying to survive. You know, we don't know how to take care of our kids. We're learning that on the fly. We're trying to figure out how to help them in school. You know, a lot of people with Duchenne have additional issues that they have to deal with in addition to just Duchenne. You know, it's not, there's not a cookie cutter of everybody with this does A, B, and C, and it's consistent so that even advice for somebody may not even remotely apply to your son. You know, it's so random, and the time frames, you know, so you're learning all of this while you're actively living it, while you guys are trying to learn how to deal with it yourselves. We're trying, you know what I mean? So like you're going through things while we're trying to learn, and we're all trying to balance all that. Who has the time for research and where the money is going to come from?
You know, you know, like those special needs trusts. We found out about that. My parents passed away last year. About just 3 years before
sorry.
that. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
You know, they were in great health. And somebody told us something about, we had no idea about special needs trusts or anything like that. And we luckily did that. So that otherwise they couldn't have left the house to me. They couldn't have left me any kind of money or anything like that. But as you know, somebody in the comments said there's no reason they can't build all buildings accessible. I do believe they're doing a lot better now, especially a lot of houses, you know, it's popular to have the open design. But if your house isn't, you know, I don't know how old the new house they should move into. It's
The new house we're building into is only 1,200 square feet, which is not big. I mean, I think my wife and I first apartment before we would have kids was about the same footprint. But the problem is well, it's an old house. It was built in 1959, so it's built really, really well, which allows, believe it or not, a lot more adaptation because it's a very sound structure. Now, we were looking to build originally, but COVID has done such a number on the cost of building materials and supply chain that we were told it would take roughly 2 years to have our house complete. And at that point, it still might not be the way we want it. And there would be things that would have to be done over time to accommodate Lance. So we decided, let's just bite the bullet now and retrofit a house that has about 60% of what we want, and we'll do the rest. So we're fortunate enough that the house we're selling, we're going to actually have enough cash from that to be able to retrofit the house the way we want it. Like we're taking the master bath and we're converting that into a wet room. We're getting a swim spa. You know, we're doing what we can with the money we have. You know, a lot of people, they sell their house at our age. Because I'm 52, my wife's 46. They sell their house and they're downsizing so that they can like live more fun. You know, we're selling our house so we can pay for the things we need for our son. You know, so you know, and I'm not gonna lie. There's bitterness occasionally when I see pictures of families running on the beach and taking vacations and buying summer houses. When I'm like, you know, can we get a wet room for our son so we can take a shower without risking injuring him? It's just a very different perspective.
Yeah, my parents were 42 and 43 when they had me, and they already had like, 5 other kids. So, just you don't have the time to do a whole lot of stuff. There's things here that I look at that I could really get changed, but my parents didn't have the money or the time to do all that stuff.
Mhm.
So,
Go ahead.
I'm glad you could do it.
Yeah, and so am I, and that's the irony here is that my wife and I we've put in the work to earn what we've got. Neither one of us came from money by any stretch. We both worked hard and got where we are, and I don't mean this in any type of bragging way, but we make a pretty decent living, each of us individually, and it's still an incredible struggle. We'll get messages from insurance companies saying, we don't know how much we're going to cover of the item you've requested, and you will be responsible for whatever we don't cover without telling us how much. And they say, we can't support getting this item unless you sign here and agree to cover the costs in addition to whatever we cover, but there's no numbers. So like, say it's a wheelchair, which every 5 years, and I think you guys are pretty aware of how much your life and body can change in 5 years with Duchenne. And what the wheelchair you had 5 years ago isn't exactly the wheelchair you need 2 years later, let alone 5. And now we're getting a letter that says, please sign here saying that you're going to pay whatever the excess is beyond insurance, even though we don't know how much it costs. We're not telling you how much it costs, and we're not going to tell you how much you owe. But if you don't agree to do it, we're not going to let you get the item at all. Well, what option do you have, right? So you sign it, and then you get a bill for $3,000. And like going, I don't have $3,000 just lying around. We're saving for this aspect or whatever, or trying to compensate for things that bills that came early before we, it's just, the whole thing is just madness. I read somewhere that the estimated out-of-pocket cost for a child with Duchenne over the course of their life can be close to $1 million. How many people that can meet that need?
Yeah, I don't think my dad ever made $1 million.
Like combined. Yeah.
Insane.
And I don't want to go down the very delicate political path of
right.
Insurance and Medicare. That's not what this call's about. But these are just the things as a caregiver that you have to address. You have no choice. You have to dig in with both hands. And I've learned that I have to be mean to people, and I hate that. Because when they're on the other side of the phone, it's easy for them to say no. So I literally have to badger them to get them to handle anything, because that's the way they're trained to act, to say no in the hopes that you'll go away.
Yeah, I've dealt with those phone calls infinite times. Even just more recently, I have to get a tooth surgery. It's been 8 months since I've needed it. And I've been calling doctor after doctor, basically, and trying to get things through.
What surgery?
For my tooth, basically.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, but because of Duchenne, they have to be careful about everything.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, and that's another thing is, first of all, how many times do you guys hear people confusing muscular dystrophy with MS? Oh yeah, I have a friend who has MS.
Constantly.
Yeah, that's constant. Yeah.
But I have muscular dystrophy. Oh, MS.
It's like, were you not really good at letters? Because S and D are very different letters.
Yeah.
Or
cerebral palsy, or they'll.
And I admit freely, when I was a kid, I didn't differentiate. Wheelchair was a wheelchair. I assumed everything was more or less the same. I get it. But it's just frustrating when the people who are supposed to know, like family members or, close friends, and and they're still calling it MS. I'm like, oh, no, it's not MS.
I've
all.
had people at church are you excited about that great news? Like they read what do I'll send you the article about something to help MS. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah. And when I was in elementary school, a lot of the PE teachers were like, I know muscular dystrophy, you just need to run it off and it'll be fine. And I'm just like,
Wow.
no, you
Wow.
don't understand it. You don't understand what's going on.
It's like, that is not the best treatment.
I remember a teacher asking me in school, they asked me in school, like fourth grade, are you sure you have muscular dystrophy? Because maybe you got misdiagnosed or
Yeah, you seem to get around fine.
yeah, like
I'm like, well, it's a genetic test, so they're pretty confident that the outcome is accurate,
yeah.
But one of the things that I've noticed, and I don't know if this is fair to point out, and you guys obviously have your own experiences, but I don't feel as if dads get as much credit. I don't know if credit's the right word, or in regards to helping with Duchenne. Like they're very unsung. There's hundreds of mom groups, and there's like almost one dad group. And in talking to some of these dads, some of us, and occasionally myself included, we get a little bitter about it. I'm not going to lie. I don't know why a mother's love supersedes a father's. I know that there's lots of fathers out there who are horrible people, but frankly, there's lots of mothers who are horrible people too. I guess the option is that a lot of men leave, and that's a stereotype that when they when fathers have special needs children that they bail. But I think that that's a pretty unfair stereotype, because I've met some amazing men in this group.
I remember I was speaking to a college class, to the guest lecturer about special needs, about IEPs, and I was talking about my dad, how much he had done for me, driving me, and just doing so much. And a woman in the class got up and ran outside crying. Like somebody went out after her. The teacher told me, she just found out her child, she's diagnosed, or her child was diagnosed with something, and her husband left. That's the only instance that I've really seen.
I've heard of that for one of my teachers as well. Like one of her kids. Well, luckily she found another husband who treats her kid very well. So I've heard those kinds of stories all the time, but I think that's definitely part of the reason, I
And
would say.
it doesn't take genetics to be a father.
No, it doesn't take genetics. It doesn't take genetics. And frankly, a kind person is a kind person, whether they're a father or not. There are people, and I struggle with it so hard. I struggle with asking for help. I mean, I will kill myself to cover everything and do everything rather than admit I need help. And I'll have people call me out like, you're going to break, right? I'm like, nope, that's not going to happen. Never. I got it. No problem at all. They're like, you're delusional, right? Nope, I'm good. I'm not a problem. And it's one of those things where, so when Lance lost his ability to walk, we were ill-equipped with a van. We didn't have anything. We had a good chair. Well, we thought it was a good chair at the time. That's a whole nother freaking story. And one day, so a couple weeks after it happened, and the school, after the first administration, I guess about third grade, they finally started to engage and realized, first of all, how challenging this was, and second of all, how freaking awesome our kid is. And they started to get involved and helpful. And so they're emotionally invested. Like there's been tears from teachers on IEPs, and, when they see a challenge for Lance or a decline in his abilities, they 100%, they were getting emotionally invested, which is a good thing. I think you can admit people will invest as much as they can from a distance as long as they can, because they know once they get sucked in, they can't turn their back. So they like tread the line of being supportive but distant. It's a really weird dynamic. But anyway, so we're at the school, and I walked in to the principal, and Lance had been not walking for about 2 weeks, and I was reasonably confident at the time that he wasn't going to walk again, just because I didn't know how he was going to heal enough to be able to relearn to walk all in a time frame, that would have it, stick, because he'd been declining anyway. Excuse me. And I walked in one day, and I just started sobbing, and I'm not much of a crier anymore. I used to be when I was younger, but I don't know, life just kind of hardens you maybe. And I was telling her about how hard it is. I'm the only one who can get him in and out of the van. I'm the only one who can get him up and downstairs. I'm the only one who can get him on and off the toilet. I have to be eternal. I have to be awake, and I have to be happy about it. I can't make him feel bad for the things that he has to have. It's not his fault. So no matter what I'm feeling in my head, I have to be, hey man, I know it's 4 o'clock in the morning. You have to poop. Let's roll. Meanwhile, in my head, I'm going, dude, you are so freaking tired. If you don't go to sleep soon, you're going to kill someone. Like, shh, I'll talk to you later. I have to deal with this first and make him feel okay about it. So I walked into her office, and I just completely lost it. And the next day, and we had come across a lift. It's not a Hoyer lift. I think it's, I don't know who makes it, but it's similar to a Hoyer lift for $200 on Marketplace. But one of the guys in the dad's group pointed us in that direction. And the guy's like, I also have a full handicap van that they used to use for Carroll County. And it's got a full lift in the back and everything. And I'm like, well, I don't have like $70,000 or $80,000 lying around, so that's good to know. He's like, no, $8,500. I was like, what? I mean, it has a full industrial automatic chairlift in the back
Yeah,
of it.
the hydraulic lift. Yeah,
Exactly. It's freaking amazing, right? So I'm like, well, I've got to find $8,500. So I was talking to the teacher, and then the next day I walked in, she's like, I'm not legally allowed to do this as the principal, but I'd like somebody to start a GoFundMe for you. And I've contacted someone who will. And then within 48 hours, we had $20,000 in an advance. And she did it because I didn't ask for help. I would have hawked every credit card I had and taken cash out every day, $300 a time, until I hit $8,500 to buy the damn thing. But she jumped in, and next thing I know, the community, which, on a general level, communities can be a little bit weird, especially in our current lovely political climate. But you personalize it with a small, beautiful boy who's engaging and fun and sweet, and a father and mother who are just trying to help. And people want to help, they just don't know how. And this principal gave them a way to do it. And we got the van, and I'm like, okay, now that's one thing. Now my wife can get him from place to place, and it's not just me. That's one. Now what's the next thing I need? Okay, we need to be able to get around the house. Now we're moving. The next thing is okay, what kind of bathroom options can we have so that we can have support? And then, in a matter of speaking, I get my life back, or at least more of it.
Stephen, listening to you talk, I realized a lot of things after my parents weren't here anymore. And as I watched them decline, but I realized I never gave my dad enough credit. My dad, I wasn't up till he was in his mid-70s. He was still picking me up to put the sling underneath me to pick me up in the Hoyer lift. And as men, we in general, we tend to keep things in. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff he didn't say, and a lot of tears that weren't really shed, but were there. So that is a lot of stress on you. You feel like you've got to provide, and you've got to, the extra stress. Of course, every parent has that.
Yeah.
But what do you think we could do to support dads more, to make everybody more aware of what dads can do to help?
Can I also add to that a little bit from my experience?
Go for it. Yeah, please.
So for me, my family really adapted. I feel like we're very honest with each other about how we're feeling. And just by talking through that, it's been very helpful to think of like being a team, basically trying to deal with all the different situations that we have. So that's really the sort of mindset that I've had with my parents. So I found that to be really helpful in terms of that.
Well, it's funny, and I actually wrote a blog on it. You may or may not have read it. It was the most recent one where it was like, don't call us heroes. It was just sort of about, heroes to some degree have a choice. You don't have a choice having Duchenne, and we don't have a choice being your caregivers. I mean, I guess in a base level we have a choice, but we really don't. If you're a human being with any type of heart or soul, you don't have a choice, right? But what I always found ironic was the way people would be like, oh, it takes a special person to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but it doesn't. It's not like, that there's some sort of celestial being that said, these are good people who would stand by a child with infirmities. Give them the child with Duchenne because they can handle it. They're special people. It doesn't work that way. You get what you get and you deal with what you deal with. We're not special. We're just human. We take care of people because it's the right freaking thing to do. It has nothing to do with being special or heroic. It's just care, love, and do your best. And I feel like that people use you're like, I'm sure you guys have, and the word warrior is thrown around, and I don't mean to discount those who with Duchenne who have it. And but your desire to fight doesn't come from a warrior's attitude. It comes from a human attitude to get the most out of life as you can. It's the only life you get. Yeah.
Stephen, was that blog on Lindy's website by any chance?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I wrote that.
Oh, really?
I wrote that article about not calling us the heroes.
What's funny? I don't know that. I think I need to catch up. Yeah, I was say Liddy just wrote. We both wrote one. That's kind of funny. Well, so you have it from the Duchenne perspective, and I have it from the caregiver perspective. So now, I think we should put them in a box set and sell them on eBay.
Yeah, like I've always said, I don't want to be called a hero because I got some disease. I want to be called a hero because I'm a doctor in psychology, or I wrote a book, something like that. Yeah, be a hero for what you actually do, not for nobody else is a hero because they were born.
Yeah, exactly. A hero is a mantle that is earned. It's not something that you can just throw at somebody because they're dealing with something that's more than you can conceive of. And it's not their fault for not being able to conceive of it. I wish I couldn't, as I'm sure you guys wish you didn't have to know what this was like. It doesn't mean that you did something heroic to get there.
Yeah, I'd much rather be called a hero because I threw the game-winning touchdown. That still doesn't make you a hero, but if we're going to choose why you call me a hero without deserving it, let it be that.
Yeah, people are like, wow, you carry your son everywhere. I'm like, well, it's because the option would be leaving him on the lawn. That doesn't make me a hero. It means I don't want my child to be rained on. It's
yeah.
And it's a fine line that's really hard to explain to others, and it's difficult.
I also think one advantage you have now that you can work from home, that's I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's something now that as more dads can work from home, maybe that's why they can get more recognition. My dad is at work, so my mom is the one having to get me up. That's why I think I always gave her more credit.
Well, it's one of those things where I didn't really, I was working from home even before we had Lance, and it just sort of kept going that way. And, once obviously his diagnosis, and, I grew up, and I don't mean any disparaging things. We live in a very sensitive political and social climate right now. I was raised Roman Catholic, so I'm guilty for pretty much everything. So my life's motivation has been to assuage that guilt. And Lance is a perfect conduit for me to feel better about myself. Like, see, I'm good. I carry my son around all day and I take care of all of his needs. See, validate that I'm okay. So I don't have to go to confession every 5 minutes. So it's sort of helped me with my own martyr complex, which is nice. I have a direct focus for that martyrdom instead of doing it for everybody, including people who don't care.
What's funny? I had a friend ask me one time, like, something about, do you think that you have this because your parents are being punished for something they did?
That's
And
a
I'm like,
helpful question.
Like, what? That person's not my friend anymore. I'm like, what?
Of course. Yeah,
So-
like,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
See, I would love to hire someone that just walks behind Lance. So when he gets asked stupid questions, this person is big enough to just smack somebody in the back of the head. Lance doesn't have to answer the question, and it's legal. That would be glorious.
yeah, that would.
Or they have a bunch of I'm stupid signs and just hand them out.
Yeah.
Here's a sign for you.
And I don't know if you ever had this, but people who don't understand this love to give advice to my family. And I'm just like, I don't get how you think you have any knowledge in this.
Oh, I'm sure you guys read this. Like when you guys, I'll speak from my own experience, but I'm sure there are parallels. When people say, "Oh man, I totally understand what you're saying. I know what you're going through." Do you? I've seen your kids. I'm thinking no. I'm thinking you have no idea. I appreciate that you want to understand, but I tell you, you really want to understand? I could use a week in Bora Bora, and you guys could come over and you could do all of these things. And what I'm going to do for your son who's 5 or 6, I'm going to give them a 50-pound weighted blanket and I'm going to drape it across their shoulders. And you get to care for them and do all those things while I'm in Bora Bora. And then at the end of the week, we'll compare notes. And then you can tell me what you understand.
Yeah, yeah, I had people tell me that about my life, and I'm like, come live a day in my life. Let's see how you go nuts.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
both the hero articles are in the Facebook chat.
Nice.
stellar. Yeah, and I don't even I would never even attempt to tell Lance that I know what he's going through. What's the upside of that? Oh, I know what you're. No, I don't. There's certain areas where solidarity doesn't make sense. You know, I want Lance to experience life to the best of his ability and not be defined by this disease as much as possible. I mean, it's invariable that the two will be linked. You know, it's not like you could suddenly see him in a framework where he's not a child with Duchenne. But like one of the reasons why we moved, we're moving literally less than a mile from where we live now.
Right.
So we'll be able to see our nice big house every day, which has its own drawbacks because Lord knows it's a lot better now than when we bought it. But you know, one of the reasons we did that is because Lance has a dynamic personality. He's well liked. The school knows him. They're all very familiar. And I didn't want to put him in or excuse me, not I, we, my wife and I do this together. If I've been saying I a lot, I apologize. I mean, no disrespect to her. We decided that starting Lance at a new school at 10 years old, when he's already in his wheelchair, he becomes the redheaded, chubby kid in a wheelchair and not Lance anymore. The school he's in now, he's Lance, and they watched him end up in a wheelchair, but they still see him as Lance almost as much as we do. But Lance, starting him in a new school would have just been wrong. Just recreating his entire social dynamic at this stage would have just been a horrible, horrible injustice to him.
And that transition to a wheelchair is hard anyway.
Exactly. You know, there are real practical issues that he's going to have to deal with. I didn't want him to have a whole swarm of emotional ones to go along with it. You know, there's 2 little girls that sit on side by side of him in his classroom, Emma and Lena, and they're freaking adorable because they're almost like fangirls with him. It's the funniest thing. Like when Lance gets hurt, they're like, "Oh my God, is Lance okay? Like, how can we help?" It's fantastic. And I was like, I'm not taking that away from him. In any way, shape, or form.
Girls that did that,
right? I'm like, I
Yeah.
never did either. I was just
like
a huge
women of the
dork.
appropriate age.
Well, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't get a girl to talk to me when I was 10, you know. I mean, he's got charisma, that's for sure.
I don't think it would happen because I would have liked every girl that treated me like that, so they probably scared them off. But,
well, yeah, go ahead.
well, what I'm going to ask is, we are getting close to time, and I think we'd like to have you back.
Anytime.
But, you know, so, what's it like talking to like us older guys that have Duchenne? Is that kind of a weird thing, or is that something you didn't think would happen? Or
it's funny, the idea of it was harder than the reality, if that makes sense. A couple in 2019, I was a guest speaker at the PPMD conference in Orlando, right? At the time, Lance was only 7. I had written a blog. It caught the attention of Pat Furlong. I don't know how, and she friended me, and she's like, I'd like you to talk about what you've been through in regards. And I was like, okay, I don't know anything about anything, but if you want to hear me yabber, I can always do that, as you guys have sure noticed. And while I was there the last night, I met a gentleman. He's mid-20s. His name was Mike. I wish I could remember his last name, and I hate myself for not remembering it. But I was talking to him, and we were still new. Lance was still more or less the old Lance, still walking around, getting along fine,
Right.
almost very, very few issues at all. And I'm talking to him, and we may have had a drink or two. It does create honesty. And I was telling him, about, this research and that research, and if they could do this faster or that faster, and all, and he started laughing at me. And I was like, what's funny? He's like, we don't worry about time. We have Duchenne. We don't worry about time. We get whatever time we get. When we wake up in the morning, we're like, look, a new day. Sweet. He's like, parents worry about time because they don't want to watch their kids go through it. Because in some ways that might actually be harder than what we go through in some ways, because they can't stop it. They can't help it. And there's nothing they can do but watch it happen and be as supportive as they can. He's like, parents worry about time. We don't. Every day we get is just more time. I will never forget that as long as I live.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Even now, like doing my research, I try to have a sense of urgency for whatever I do, because I have to think. Well, I guess it's a little bit different, but I think about that a little bit myself in terms of trying to get things done. It just it seems like the time frame is always small.
Yeah, and I want to bring up one last thing before we wrap this up. Is there's a lot of attention about how to support dads, and it's such a tricky question, because there's a fine line of knowing we need help but not knowing what form it comes into, and then the overtones of guilt that can come along with accepting help. Like, it feels weird to say I need help so I can be away from my son, so that when I come back I'll be better for my son. Do you know what I mean? Like, please come in and give me a break for a few hours so that I can be a better dad when I come back, because I'm running low. I feel like every day you wake up with 100 stress points. And as a caregiver, I start off the day with 50 of them gone just by opening up my eyes. And then, if any random thing happens, it doubles the amount that it takes away. So like something that would be 5 for somebody else becomes 10 to 15 for me. So that by like 7 or 8 o'clock, if I've had any kind of annoying day, I'm spent. But the day is not over. So the thing that is most important to me is to be remembered on a daily basis, or as often as possible, that I'm still Stephen Marchesani. I'm not just a father and a caregiver. I still value the same things. I still enjoy the same things. I still want to do them. The frequency and the opportunity may not be there, but I need the people in my life that remember me before this to keep letting me be that, because it will be dark when that comes to an end, and people have fallen off over time, as they often do. And then they realize that it's just me and Lance, or me, Leah and Lance, and Vincent hopefully will have moved on and have his own family, because he deserves that. And I would like to address in some future conversation siblings, because I hadn't even fathomed what he's watching compared to what I'm watching. Vincent is 13. He still sleeps in the same bed with his brother every night, because that's what Lance wants. There's a glimpse of my older son. He's that amazing, and more should be said about him.
That is something, Lindy, as we've talked about. So I think you gave us a whole new subject to talk about.
I actually think that he was amazed that I was doing that tonight, doing this conversation. And I think that he might do it for at least a brief period, if not the whole hour. I mean, God knows he has the gift of gab. I don't know where he got it though. It's crazy.
Well,
My
I got
younger
chills when you
brother
told me about
is.
that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. And we
Uh,
also, we haven't been reading DJ's comments as well as we should have. But DJ said siblings are fantastic,
Yeah.
and we'd love to have her son here.
My brother is actually younger than me, but because of steroids, he's a lot larger than me. So it's, a lot of times he's like my older brother than my younger brother.
It's funny how size does that. I have two older brothers. They're 3 and 4 years older than me, but everybody thinks I'm the oldest because of size. I'm like, well, so if you base age on size, then I should be like 138. It makes no sense.
You know what's hard for me as siblings? My siblings were 15 to 22 when I was born. But
Wow.
my sister already had 2 kids. So I have the baby, and man, they treat me so. I'm like, I'm a doctor. Why are you treating me like I'm not a baby?
You never stop being the
okay.
youngest, do you?
I'm like, I'm more
Yeah, I know.
educated than all you put together. Come on. Give me some
Yeah, my
credit here.
brother would every time he comes back home buy me some gifts all the time. Oh, and
Yep.
that's what he remembered. Or that's what he loves to do.
Yeah. Well,
I
I
appreciate it.
Brother
I
was over me, but he made me younger, but I look up to him. But so just Stephen, do you have any closing comments? Like, should we be more aware of DMD dads that aren't
I do-
asking?
I do think that there's a way to do that. And what's funny is the people who support DMD dads the most are other DMD dads, which is kind of funny because like they have the same burdens. So you have to like time it so that your support group isn't stressed out in the same way that you are at the same time. So you kind of have to rotate who's upset about what to know who to talk to at any given time. It's pretty funny.
Okay. Yeah, we do have a DMD dad chat.
There is. It's a constant running stream in Facebook chat with Bruce. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Bruce Ward, he's an admin. I think there's a couple more. I'm still relatively new with it. And sometimes I get into it and sometimes I'm like, woof. It's
Been
like
a
I
tough
said,
day.
yeah, it's like going, I think I need to not, and it's embarrassing that I have this option, but sometimes I need to not do DMD. You know, I need to have a night where I go into my woodworking shop, I take out my hand tools, I turn off the things, I put on my headphones, and my world shrinks to a 20 by 40 wood shop. And that's it. Because if I don't recharge the next day, forget it.
Yeah, we need that too. Except, invariably, like I'll be doing something just fine. And I guess I'm paying attention, so I breathe a little bit different. So they're like, "Are you okay? You're breathing weird." They're like, "Oh, great! Now I'm thinking about my thanks a lot." So yeah, that's good to get away and if us older guys with DMD could ever offer any advice or give any help,
Yeah.
we're there.
Well,
I guess we'll count Felix as an old guy.
Yeah, I'll be an old guy. It's fine.
No, I like I said, the idea of talking to grown-ups with DMD was scary for me. I'm not gonna lie. Earlier today, I was more than a little nervous. You know, it's kind of challenging to see your future. But what's funny is during this conversation, I forgot I was talking to people with DMD. It just
Thank you.
is it a thing? Because it doesn't feel like a thing. And anybody who wants to reach out to me for any reason at any time, I'm easily foundable on Facebook because I'm literally the only Stephen Marchesani in the country.
That's
like,
nice.
Yeah, it's handy. It's handy. My wife took my name because she's like, "Oh, there's 6 billion Warrens in the world. I want to be a Marchesani just so people can know who the hell I am." So
that's great.
Thank you very, very much for your time, guys. I've truly enjoyed this.
Thank you. And DJ, I think DJ is referring to getting away, or I do that, try that at times too. Doesn't last very long, but I try.
I would actually like to, in a future conversation, pick your guys' brains on, how do you step away? How do you put yourself in a mindset that allows you to not say, like you were saying, now I'm breathing funny. Somebody pointed that out. How do you just find a moment to be like, you know what, right now, that's not a thing.
I don't know if this is healthy or not, but I throw myself into my work or whatever studies I'm doing.
Yeah,
and
focus or concentrate on
yeah.
something.
What's your work, Felix? 'Cause I know you're a psychologist, Ryan. So what do you do
Well,
to
I'm
step
a
up?
life
I'm also a
coach.
psychologist
Oh,
as
life
well.
coach. Okay.
But I can't legally
I'm
say
in the process of the PhD, not yet.
yeah, if you're not licensed as a psychologist, you can't legally say you're a psychologist.
Really?
But for me, I write poetry sometimes, or I wrote a novel.
I want to read that, by the way.
Yeah, Rectify the Avenging Angel. And
Yeah.
really, the main character is basically what I think I would be like if I wasn't in a wheelchair. And sometimes doing that helps me escape. It's weird.
Well, and that's one of the things. Like people assume that, you guys couldn't escape, but every person I've ever met tries to find a way to escape, whether they're normal or healthy or whatever. Everybody needs to escape. The disease has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
One last thing. Are you guys and DJ, I am a huge fan of nature myself. I'll send you a picture. That the view we have from our new house, mind-boggling. It's unbelievable.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm actually going to build Lance a plateau on the land so he can do bird watching from there. I think that'll be really cool.
Yeah, my parents, when I was very young, decided to take me to all the national parks in the U.S. as much
That's
as
awesome.
possible. So that was it's been great.
It's
travel while you're young with DMD if you can.
Yeah, no, perspective can be gained through nature. That's for damn sure. But yeah, I forgot what I was saying.
Sorry to interrupt that.
Oh, no, I interrupted myself.
So yeah, Lindy said if you go to Ryan J. Russell on Twitch, you can find where I like chapter 1 of my book. I'm doing the audible version on there.
Oh, excellent.
Not sure if I'm going to do the whole thing yet because I'm going to do enough to get you hooked. Then you got to go buy it.
That's the way I do it. Read chapter 1 and leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, Stephen, we could stay here and keep talking forever, but
we probably could.
But I think we're going to call it a day so we can bring you back another time or 2 or 3 or who knows.
Anytime, man. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And, anything, if there's anything that I've said that's helped you, or because God knows you guys have helped me, or anybody listening or watching that's like, that hadn't occurred to me, mission accomplished.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing so much attention to, this thing. We need to talk about dads. We need to talk about parents, challenges. So we just really appreciate this. We appreciate everybody that's joined us tonight. Everybody's going to watch this later.
Yeah, it takes a village. We need to know all of the village.
Thank you very much. It's Lindy has put on the hat. I believe that is our closing speech.
It's time to go.
The fold over the eye is very fetching. Really, it's very come hither.
It's pizza time, so we're going to go. Let everybody go home and eat their pizza.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.